The mountain air at 6,000 feet does not just chill the skin, it presses against the lungs, thin and sharp. Inside the cabin, the silence is a physical weight, measured only by the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock that has stood in the corner since the foundation was poured. Elena Vance moves through the living room with the precision of a woman who trusts nothing but her own meticulous records. She places her ceramic mug on the coaster, a perfect, centered alignment with the edge of the mahogany table. She does not look back. She does not need to. Every object in this space has a designated coordinate. Welcome to Swasti Diaries, where we dissect the anatomy of the impossible, pulling back the layers of reality to reveal the cold, calculated truths hidden beneath. Returning to the cabin, the floorboards are polished to a dull sheen, free of scuffs, free of debris. Elena is a former forensic auditor. She understands the language of anomalies. She keeps a logbook on the sideboard, documenting the humidity levels and the exact tension of the window latches. Tonight, the cabin is a sealed vessel. Outside, the pine trees sway in a wind that makes no sound against the triple-paned glass. She walks to the kitchen to pour a glass of water, her movements deliberate, her eyes scanning the periphery of the room. A stray dust mote dances in the amber glow of the lamp, settling onto the dark wood. Everything is exactly as she left it, or so the geometry of the room suggests. But as she turns, her gaze drifts to the mug on the table. It has shifted just 3 millimeters to the left. The foundation of her reality begins to tilt. 3 millimeters. To the casual observer, it is a negligible deviation, a mere ghost of a movement. But to Elena Vance, whose life is an exercise in data integrity, it is a screaming contradiction. She stares at the ceramic mug. Her hand hovers in the air, the skin pale against the dim light of the cabin. She does not touch it. Instead, she pulls her notebook from her pocket, the leather cover worn smooth, and records the time. 11:42 p.m. She leans in, her breath hitching, checking for circular condensation rings on the wood. There are two. One perfectly centered, one slightly offset. The logic is inescapable. Someone or something has interacted with the physical space of this room while she was merely feet away in the kitchen. She scans the ceiling. The heavy oak rafters are silent, holding the weight of the roof with indifferent strength. She examines the air vents. The metal grills are undisturbed. The dust patterns clinging to the screws appear unbroken, consistent with weeks of static atmospheric conditions. Is it the mind playing tricks? A fracture in the memory of a woman trained to spot flaws in balance sheets? She walks to the center of the room, her boots silent on the floorboards. She looks at the reflection in the window, a dark, distorted silhouette of herself, framed by the impenetrable black of the mountain night. She feels the sudden, sharp drop in cabin temperature, a shift in air pressure that makes her ears pop. It is subtle, a forensic detail that would escape a lesser eye, but the barometric needle on her wall-mounted gauge is twitching downward. The cabin is breathing, and she is not the only one exhaling. Elena moves with the precision of a surgeon. She ignores the instinct to flee, choosing instead to dismantle the illusion of her own safety. She pulls Elena stands beneath the attic hatch, the beam of her flashlight trembling only for a fraction of a second before she regains absolute control. The realization settles in, cold and heavy, like lead settling in the stomach. This isn't a break-in. It is an occupation. She traces the path of the dust disruption again. It doesn't end at the hatch. The streak continues, faint but deliberate, tracing the perimeter of the ceiling molding until it vanishes into the corner where the drywall meets the heavy timber beams. She reaches into her bag and retrieves a digital manometer. She places the sensor against the seam of the wall panel. The reading fluctuates, a rhythmic, subtle shift in air pressure that occurs every 6 seconds. It is the breathing cycle of a person resting in a confined, pressurized space. A stalker does not always hunt with noise. They hunt with proximity. She thinks of Julian Thorne, the architect. He designed this cabin to be an impenetrable fortress, but he also designed the blueprints for the hidden voids, the service corridors meant for electrical routing and structural maintenance. He hadn't built a home. He had built a cage with a secret observation deck. She moves to the wall, pressing her palm against the surface. It is warm. Not the warmth of the ambient room temperature, but a localized, concentrated heat signature radiating from behind the insulation. She pulls a small stethoscope from her kit. She presses the diaphragm against the wall. Silence, then a soft metallic click. The sound of a latch engaging. Someone is shifting their weight. She realizes now the psychology of the parasite. They don't want to be seen. They want to be the architecture itself. They want to be the shadow that watches the light. The intruder is not coming from the outside. They are waiting for the exact moment the light goes out. Elena moves with the precision of a surgeon. She mounts the high-definition lenses in the corners of the living room, ensuring the field of view covers every inch of the exposed rafters. She syncs the feeds to her laptop, watching the monitors flicker to life. The resolution is crisp, rendering the grain of the wood and the dust motes dancing in the dim light. She sits in the armchair, eyes locked on the screens, waiting for the flicker of movement. 10 minutes pass, then 20. The only change is the shifting of shadows as the moon tracks across the mountain peaks outside. She checks the signal strength, full bars. She checks the motion sensitivity settings, maximized. Yet the feed shows nothing. Not a shadow, not a shift. Suddenly the screen glitches. A wave of static rolls across the display, obscuring the view of the ceiling hatch. She taps the keyboard, attempting to reset the buffer, but the screen remains a mosaic of digital noise. It is not a malfunction of the hardware. It is an interference pattern, a localized electromagnetic pulse, small, controlled, and intentional. Someone is using a device to scramble the signal the moment they begin to move. She realizes the trap. The cameras are not blind, they are being blinded. She stands, the chair creaking loudly in the sudden stillness of the cabin. She walks to the wall, pressing her ear to the wood paneling once more. This time there is no metallic click. Instead, there is the hum of a low-frequency oscillator. It vibrates against her skin, a subtle rhythmic thrum that matches the heartbeat of the house. The intruder is not merely hiding in the walls. They are controlling the environment, dictating what she sees and what she ignores. The technology that was meant to protect her has become the very tool used to gaslight her. She is fighting a ghost made of circuitry and steel. The static on the monitor dies away, leaving only the hum of the cooling fan and the absolute, suffocating silence of the cabin. Elena stands frozen. Her breath is shallow, intentional. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a digital recorder. She needs data. She needs to separate the architecture from the intruder. She presses record. She begins to narrate the sequence. At 2:14, a soft metallic scrape vibrates through the floorboards near the northwest support beam. Not the expansion of wood, but the sliding of a steel bolt. She steps toward the sound, her boots silent on the rug. The air pressure in the room shifts. A sudden, subtle drop that makes her ears pop. It is as if the room itself just exhaled. She pulls a notepad from her desk, marking the time, the location, and the intensity of the vibration. She is mapping the house by its disturbances. Another sound follows, a granular rhythmic shuffling, like sand shifting inside a hollow space. It moves from the rafters above her head toward the kitchen ventilation intake. It is purposeful, measured, and completely devoid of human haste. It is the movement of someone who owns the dark. Elena tracks the sound with her gaze, following the path of the ceiling joists. She realizes the house isn't just a structure. It is a cage with moving walls. She watches the dust motes suspended in the moonlight. They are swirling in a localized current, a vortex caused by the intake of air through a seam in the woodwork. Someone is breathing on the other side of the panel. She reaches out, her fingers hovering inches from the wall, feeling the cool, vibrating timber. She isn't just listening to a ghost. She is listening to an engineer at work, dismantling her reality, one structural vibration at a time. I spread the logs across the mahogany desk, a grid of dates, times, and pressure fluctuations. My pen moves like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through the chaos of the last 3 months. I isolate the variables. Every time I left for the grocery run, every Tuesday at 10 a.m., the pressure in the master bedroom dropped. Every time I sat in the study for my audit work, the air intake in the kitchen rattled in a rhythmic 3-beat cadence. It wasn't random. It was a schedule. I circled the entries. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. The intruder wasn't just lurking. He was waiting for the house to be unoccupied, moving through the hollow gaps between the drywall and the exterior cladding. I look at the blueprint I retrieved from the archives, the original structural schematics for this cabin. Julian Thorne's signature is etched in the corner, a bold, arrogant script. I trace the path of the ventilation ducts. They intersect with the main support beams. These aren't just conduits for air. They are corridors. He designed the house to be a living organism, a skeleton with veins wide enough for a man to crawl through. I realize now that the shuffling sound I heard earlier wasn't a threat. It was a maintenance check. He is monitoring the structural integrity of his own hidden pathways. My hands tremble, not from fear, but from the terrifying precision of the deduction. I am living inside a machine, and the engineer is still inside the engine room. I check the clock. 10:02 a.m. Tuesday. The air pressure in the living room begins to dip. The hum of the cooling fan changes pitch. He is moving. The house is waking up, and I am the only variable he hasn't accounted for. Yet, the hum of the fan is a steady mechanical heartbeat. I close my eyes. I force the logic to the surface. Is this real? Or is this the architecture of a fractured mind, projecting a decade of paranoia onto the rafters of this cabin? I reach for my medical journal, the one I kept during my own psychiatric evaluation years ago, after the scandal broke. I open it to the section on stress-induced sensory processing disorders. I need to be objective. If I am hallucinating, the data will show inconsistencies. I pick up a clean glass of water and place it on the center of the mahogany desk. I mark the position with a fine point pen. If the pressure shift I just heard was real, the slight vibration through the floorboard should cause a minute displacement in the water's surface tension. I count the seconds. 1, 2, 3. The glass remains perfectly still. My pulse hammers against my throat. I am forcing myself to doubt my own senses. I pull out my voice recorder, the same one I use for the audit reports. I press record. I describe the sound I heard. A metallic scrape, a hollow thud, a shifting weight. My voice is steady, analytical, devoid of hysteria. I am documenting the evidence as if I am the auditor, and my own life is the ledger. I look at the blue synthetic fiber I recovered earlier, now encased in a plastic slide. It is tangible. It has mass. It has chemical composition. It is not a phantom. The fear is a natural response to an unnatural situation. I am not spiraling. I am observing. The pressure in the room drops again, sharper this time. The air feels thin, pulled into the voids behind the walls. The house is inhaling. I am not losing my mind. I am finally seeing the monster inside the machine. I climb the ladder, the rungs biting into my palms with every upward movement. The air in the attic is thick, tasting of stagnant dust and insulation fibers. My flashlight beam cuts through the gloom like a scalpel, exposing the skeleton of the cabin, the rafters, the cross beams, the hidden voids. I reach the north corner, where the insulation batting has been disturbed. It is not natural settling. It is a path. I crouch, my knees cracking in the silence, and move the beam along the floor joist. There, caught on a splintered piece of pine, is a shred of blue fabric, synthetic, high durability, the kind used in specialized tactical gear. I lift it with my tweezers, my hands steady. It is no longer a suspicion. It is a physical reality. My light shifts and I see it. A cigarette butt half crushed, lodged deep within the junction where the roof meets the exterior wall. I lean in, the smell of stale tobacco faint but undeniable. I pull a small evidence bag from my kit and slide the butt inside. The filter is pristine, untouched by the attic dust, meaning it was discarded recently. Someone has been breathing this air. Someone has been watching through the gaps in the rafters while I slept just feet below. I traced the path of the disturbance, the way the insulation is matted down, creating a narrow, hidden corridor that leads toward the master bedroom. I am not dealing with a ghost, nor a figment of my own history. I am tracking a parasite that has made this structure its home. The logic is cold, clinical, and terrifying. Every sound I heard, the metallic scrapes, the shifting weight, was the movement of a body navigating the internal architecture of my own house. I am not the host. I am the observer, and the observer has just found the predator's nest. The realization settles into my marrow, a cold, heavy weight that anchors me to the attic joists. I back away from the nest, my flashlight beam trembling only for a fraction of a second before I regain control. I descend the ladder, each step deliberate, my mind processing the implications. This wasn't just a hiding spot. It was a command center. I walk into the living room. The space that once felt like a sanctuary now transformed into a cage. On the mantelpiece, where my keys usually rest, sits a new object. It is a small polished brass screw, the exact type used in the cabin's internal wall framing. It is placed perfectly in the center of the wooden surface, a deliberate signal. I don't touch it. I pull out my camera, the shutter clicks sounding like a gunshot in the stillness. I move to the kitchen. My coffee mug, which I had left rinsed and inverted on the drying rack, is now upright. Inside, there is a faint dark residue, sediment that shouldn't be there. I pull a magnifying loupe from my kit and examine the rim. It is not coffee. It is a trace of drywall dust, mixed with a fine, oily lubricant. He isn't just watching anymore. He is interacting with the environment to prove his presence. Every time I turn my back, the geometry of my life is rearranged. It is a taunt, a psychological signature left by someone who knows that my background in forensic auditing makes me obsessed with patterns. He wants me to see the shift. He wants me to track the movement. I walk to the wall bordering the hallway, placing my ear against the cold, unyielding pine. There is no sound, yet I know he is listening. He is counting my heartbeats, timing my movements, waiting for the exact moment when the isolation breaks my resolve. The predator is no longer hiding in the shadows. He is inviting me to play. I move through the cabin with the cold efficiency of a forensic auditor auditing a crime scene. Except this time, I am the one constructing the audit trail. The brass screw on the mantel is no longer a taunt. It is a coordinate. I gather my supplies, a spool of high-tensile monofilament, a pressurized canister of aerosolized fluorescent powder, and a battery-powered motion sensor I salvaged from the mudroom. I am not running. I am baiting the trap. I anchor the monofilament at knee height across the narrow corridor leading to the primary wall cavity, connecting it to a small weighted chime hidden behind the curtains. It is a primitive alarm, but it will suffice to break the silence. I coat the base of the drywall where the structural seams meet the floor with a thin, near-invisible layer of the fluorescent powder. Any movement through the wall void will now leave a trail, a microscopic forensic signature of blue-tinted dust that will cling to skin or fabric. I work in silence, measuring the distance from the floor to the joist with a steel tape, noting the exact pressure drop in the room as the wind shifts outside. My hands are steady. My pulse is a flat, rhythmic line. If he is an architectural parasite, he relies on the structural blind spots of this cabin to remain untraceable. By forcing him to disturb the environment, I am stripping away his invisibility. I retreat to the kitchen, leaving the lights dim, and sit in the armchair that faces the hallway. I keep my movements minimal. I am no longer just a victim of a psychological game. I am an observer waiting for the structure to reveal its tenant. I watch the hallway, waiting for the blue dust to shimmer in the dark. The storm outside is a violent, percussive force, rain hammering against the shingles like thousands of lead pellets. It provides the perfect acoustic shroud. I sit in the armchair, my skin prickling as the cabin breathes. A subtle rhythmic expansion of the timber as the temperature drops. Then I hear it. Not a footstep, but the faint metallic scrape of a pulley wire vibrating behind the drywall. He is moving. My eyes lock onto the hallway. The monofilament remains taut, a thin, lethal hair caught in the moonlight. I watch the edge of the drywall where I applied the fluorescent powder. The air pressure in the room shifts, a sudden heavy vacuum that pulls at my eardrums, as a section of the molding shifts inward. He is not breaking in. He is emerging from the very spine of the cabin. A sliver of darkness widens in the wall void. I see it now, a flicker of movement sharp and calculated. He is testing the threshold, his weight distributed onto the hidden joists I mapped out weeks ago. He is silent, save for the faint friction of synthetic fabric against wooden studs. My heart is a steady mechanical pulse. I hold my breath, watching the blue-tinted dust particles catch the weak moonlight. He steps out, his silhouette framed against the hallway. He does not look for me. He looks for the room, his eyes scanning the space with the clinical detachment of an engineer inspecting a failed machine. He is unaware that the environment has been compromised. Every movement he makes is a signature, a sequence of forensic proofs that will anchor him to this place. He moves toward the bedroom, his gait smooth and practiced, a predator who believes the walls themselves are his cloak. I reach for the heavy flashlight on the side table. It is time to illuminate the parasite. I do not wait for him to reach the bedroom. I rise from the chair, the beam of the heavy LED flashlight slicing through the gloom like a scalpel. The light catches him mid-stride, pinning him against the hallway wall. He freezes, his body angled toward the structural cavity he emerged from. He is wearing a dark tactical suit, the source of those microscopic blue fibers. I step forward, the floorboards groaning under my boots. He doesn't bolt. He doesn't panic. He simply turns his head, and the light hits his face. It is Julian Thorne, the man who signed off on the cabin's blueprints a decade ago. His eyes, once bright with engineering brilliance, are now flat, dead pixels of obsession. He looks at me not with malice, but with the hollow gaze of a man who has spent years living inside the architecture of his own design. I swing the heavy flashlight, striking the side of his shoulder, forcing him to stumble into the open. He hits the floor, his tactical vest scraping against the hardwood. I lunged, grabbing the edge of the black fabric cowl covering his face. I yanked it downward. The mask fell, revealing the familiar, gaunt features I hadn't seen since the audit that destroyed his firm. He wasn't a ghost. He was the architect of my isolation, the man who had turned my sanctuary into a cage of his own making. He tried to reach for a hidden pull cord in the wall, a mechanism to retract himself into the ceiling cavity, but I kicked the wall panel shut. The mechanism jammed with a sickening crunch of wood and metal. He looked up at me, his lip curling into a thin, bloodless line. He wasn't here to kill me. He was here to ensure I knew exactly who had been watching me breathe for the last 3 years. The air in the hallway is stagnant, thick with the smell of splintered pine and the metallic tang of sweat. Julian remains pinned against the floorboards, his breathing rhythmic, calculated even in defeat. I keep the flashlight trained on his hands. They are calloused, stained with the gray grime of the attic insulation, that same fine particulate matter I had been breathing for years. I look at the wall panel. It is a masterpiece of deception, a seamless seam in the wainscoting that, to any casual observer, was merely a decorative join. But now, with the trim shattered, the internal pulley system is exposed. A web of high-tensile steel cables and counterweights, designed to move a man through the ceiling voids with the silence of a predator. Every piece of evidence suddenly snaps into place. The blue fibers I found in the rafters were not random debris. They were shed from his tactical suit as he crawled through the narrow crawl spaces above my bedroom. The barometric pressure fluctuations I meticulously logged? They weren't weather anomalies. They were the physical result of him opening and closing the pressurized hatch, shifting the air mass within the cabin's sealed envelope. He hadn't broken into my home. He had lived in the walls of it, observing me through the ventilation grates, waiting for the precise moment to reveal his presence. He was the architect of my paranoia, a man who had turned my own sanctuary into a laboratory for his psychological dismantling. I pull out my phone, my fingers steady as I dial. The dispatcher's voice is a distant hum against the silence of the house. Julian doesn't fight. He simply stares at the ceiling, his gaze tracing the path he once traveled. He was never an intruder. He was the house itself, breathing through the vents, watching from the dark, waiting for the audit of his life to finally conclude. The siren wail begins as a low vibration in the floorboards, growing into a harsh rhythmic pulse that shatters the cabin's stifling stillness. Blue and red lights slice through the living room, painting the walls in rhythmic, violent flashes. I watch the officers move, efficient, detached, their boots crunching on the debris of my shattered wainscoting. They pull Julian from the floor, his limbs limp, his face a mask of calculated indifference. He does not protest. He does not offer a justification. He simply watches as they bag the pulley system, the steel cables coiled like dead snakes. Every inch of this house now feels like a crime scene. I walk to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. The mountain air outside is crisp, indifferent to the rot that was hidden behind the drywall. I realize now that the architecture was never just wood and stone, it was a weapon. Every vent, every narrow crawl space, every shadow I had blamed on my own fraying mind, it was all deliberate. The violation is not just physical. It is the total destruction of the concept of a sanctuary. I look back at the empty space where he lived, a hollow gap in the ribs of the house. The dust is settling, yet the air still tastes of insulation and stale, recycled breath. There is no catharsis here, only the cold, hard logic of a man who treated my life like a structural puzzle to be dismantled. As the police cruiser pulls away, the cabin falls back into a silence that feels heavier than before. The audit is over, but the structural damage to my perception of reality remains permanent. If you found this investigation into the architecture of malice chilling, please subscribe to Swasti Diaries for more deep dives into the dark corners of the human psyche.